Okay, it looks like the snow stopped for today. A lot on the ground still, and it's still freezing cold. Makes for some nice scenery anyways. And what did I read today? This was kind of interesting. It seemed like it was an update in regards to that YouTuber that was fined $182,000 by the FAA in the US for allegedly flying a drone illegally. And by the sounds of this, it sounds like the person just pleaded guilty. As it says here, consent judgment entered against Philadelphia drone flyer for violations of FAA regulations. United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, Jacqueline C. Romero, announced today that the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania has entered a consent judgment against Michael DiCiucrio of Philadelphia, PA. In its complaint against DiCiucrio, the United States alleges that DiCiucrio operated small unmanned aircraft systems, commonly known as drones, unlawfully and unsafely in the Philadelphia area between at least December 2019 to the present, in violation of the Federal Aviation Administration requirements. You would think like he was a terrorist or something, I guess, based on this release and all that, huh? It said the United States alleges that DiCiucrio operated flights at night in close proximity to the William Penn statue, PSFS building and Liberty One building, resulting in the SUAS almost striking a church steeple during one flight. The United States alleges that during certain flights, DiCiucrio improperly operated the SUAS inside of controlled airspace near the Philadelphia airport, over people and cars, and, in at least one instance, lost control of the SUAS, causing it to fly uncontrolled over Philadelphia. The FAA warned DiCiucrio in writing and provided him with counseling and education regarding requirements for safe operations of a SUAS under the Federal Aviation Regulations. The United States alleges that DiCiucrio nonetheless has continued to operate SUASs illegally and in a careless or reckless manner that endangers others. I remember one of the news reports, the person was saying how a lot of his videos are, I guess, quote, edited, so in that sense you can't really take it at face value whether or not something was dangerous or not per se. But then it goes on to tell you what the actual punishment was, which was kind of interesting too. It says on January 23rd, 2025, before Magistrate Judge Jose Artiga, DiCiucrio agreed to the terms of the consent judgment, including that DiCiucrio 1. admits that all allegations of his conduct set forth in the verified complaint are true and accurate. And it says 2. admits that the conduct as alleged in the verified complaint violated FAA regulations and safety guidance as alleged, and 3. accepts the administrative findings of violations and further acknowledges that the FAA will deem those matters as findings of violations that may be considered aggravating factors in any future enforcement proceedings against him. So what would you think there? Again, I personally think it sounds like he just wants to get it over with, like who cares, okay, just admit to this and that, even if he feels he didn't really do anything, quote, dangerous, because that's two different topics here. One, whether or not he was doing something illegal per se, which they say he did, flying in the controlled airspace and all that. But 2, the other topic was what he was doing really that dangerous overall? And more punishment, it says, in addition, DiCiucrio agrees that he will, 1, never operate in any manner any SUAS of any type, size, model of any kind within the United States, nor will he ever seek any type of certification or license to operate any type or form of SUAS. Wow, that's harsh, isn't it? Even for like toys and all that? Like how about like a model aircraft like in the field and all that? It says 2, take down the YouTube channel known as PhillyDroneLife and no longer operate or resurrect its content or any part of it in any form. Why would they ask him to take down the whole channel instead versus simply all drone related videos? That's what you want to say, where they claim those are the dangerous ones and all that. It doesn't really make sense in that regard in terms of forcing him to take the whole thing down. And it says 3, abandon those SUAS and other items he surrendered to the FAA on May 23rd, 2024, pursuant to the court's order sanctioning DiCiucrio for contempt of the preliminary injunction entered by the court on February 29, 2024. On January 29, 2025, Chief Judge Mitchell S. Goldberg signed the consent judgment. And they make some comments here, the FAA anyway, saying, quote, we work hard to educate people about safely flying their drones, and we don't hesitate to take strong enforcement action when pilots deliberately flout the rules, said Deputy FAA Administrator Katie Thompson. Failing to adhere to the safety requirements for flying small unmanned aircraft systems endangers people and property, said U.S. Attorney Romero. All drone flyers have a responsibility to ensure that they observe all applicable regulations and guidance. Our office is committed to ensuring total compliance with the FAA regulations, and we will vigorously enforce violations wherever we find them. So what would you think about this situation? It brings up so many interesting topics. I think for me, the first question would be, if he broke the law, how dangerous was it? And is that fee justified for what he actually did per se? In my opinion, the drone regulations around the world, they just don't make any sense overall for the most part. A lot of places, they just kind of whip something out really fast, treat it as if it's all like a huge manned aircraft. Imagine doing that, like for people who don't know drones, they did it for things like vehicles and all that, in the sense of they classify everything from a bicycle to a skateboard to you pushing your child in a stroller. They consider all that as like a car, for example. Like, that'd be ridiculous, correct? That's kind of like how it is. And when laws are that broad, for example, people could weaponize it to use it against people that they don't like, which to my understanding, that may be the situation here, because apparently the person was getting so many complaints overall. It makes me wonder, was it just one obsessed, for example, stalker of sort? Like, they just hate the guy and they're trying to use every single law possible? Which brings up the point I thought to mention. If you see people drone policing other people constantly, it could be, for example, a business where it's in their best interest to fearmonger it and to get rid of anyone who makes it look like it's, I guess, safe, like what they're doing overall. Like, they have to try their best in order to stay profitable for whatever reason, like selling courses and so forth. Let's just say if the person didn't do anything, quote, illegal, but then some people are trying to push, okay, what he did was dangerous, even if it wasn't the case. What are you going to do when you have like the whole, quote, system going after you in that sense? You can't do much, correct? You're just going to say, okay, I surrender, I admit to this and this. That's what happens. Do you think you do enough to actually stop this stuff from happening? Because from what I've seen anyways, most people, they just don't say anything when they see people like that, or businesses. Crazy enough, even if you see there's a history of them fear-mongering, people still actually give them money and all that to perpetuate it, which is kind of crazy when I think about it, but that's how it is. Because as they say here, they spend a lot of time educating people. It makes me wonder, how many people do they potentially, let's just say, push or fund, or whatever you want to say, to push that narrative? But what would you think overall in this situation? And in terms of funding and pushing a narrative, this was actually really fascinating. It makes me think if this could be related in some ways in terms of actually those types of people who always push this narrative. Are they being funded in a certain way from, let's just say, official sources or something like that? Apparently in the US, there was something called the USAID funds, and they're supposed to be giving, I guess, taxpayer money to organizations or causes, I suppose. And apparently, since they had a new administration in the US, they've been investigating, okay, where's all the money going to? So while there were a lot of scandalous examples per se from the sounds of it, the one in particular that got my attention was, apparently there's some media site called Politico. I'm just guessing they talk about things like politics and so forth, just based on the name. When this investigation was conducted, all of a sudden, people were complaining, like the people who worked for this company, they weren't getting paid, and people were wondering, hey, is that related in some way, where this, I guess, media source or organization was being funded with these tax dollars when they shouldn't, because apparently, I guess they favor like a specific side or something like that, which I don't doubt for media sources. And it was verified they were getting money in that way to perpetuate, I guess, certain stories and views. So you can hear in the official White House press meetings, they actually confirmed this organization was getting money for this, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. So you can hear it here.
Yes. USAID has gotten a lot of attention in the last couple of days with some of these bizarre things that we've been, taxpayers have been funding. Mm-hmm. Now it looks like there are a couple media outlets that have been dragged into this conversation as far as USAID funding as well. Does the president have any comment on that?
So upon coming out here to the briefing room, I was made aware of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room. And I can confirm that the more than 8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening. The Doge team is working on canceling those payments now.
Funny enough, a lot of times I hear people say this or that is state-funded media more as a way to express displeasure for certain biases. But in this case, I guess you can't argue they are, quote, state-funded media, correct? And it makes you wonder, how prevalent do you think this is when it comes to things like drones, for example, in the previous story, where there's people who are specifically being funded one way or another to push a certain narrative or to go after specific types of people. I wouldn't doubt there's a lot of them and people fall for it all the time. All right, see you guys later.